We did a show on this the other day. The city of Regina, Saskatchewan was holding some talk shop, blah, blah, blah conference, government conference, and they had 45 speakers, and some of the speakers are excellent, by the way. And our friend, Dr. Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace, was one of the keynote speakers. He's famous because he has such amazing bona fides as a true environmentalist, but he's a skeptic about the left-wing politics and some of the crazy anti-science BS of the modern eco-movement. So he's more nuanced. He doesn't believe carbon dioxide is bad, for example. He makes his case scientifically. But apparently having one voice out of 45 that's skeptical of the theory of man-made global warming was just too much. The people who were supposed to defend freedom of speech in society did not. The media was the worst. Here's the local paper, the Regina Leader-Post. They called Moore a climate denier. Obviously, the CBC ginned up fake opposition to Dr. Moore. CBC is the worst. They don't allow anyone on their network who is skeptical of the theory of man-made global warming. They just ban them, total ban, total censorship. And of course, they were outraged that 1 out of 45 speakers at the conference would be a dissident voice because they don't even allow 1 out of 45 voices on their own CBC to be a dissident. So they whipped up a mob. So the media believed in censorship, and so did professors. Super gross. Professors were outraged that Dr. Moore, a PhD in ecology, is being allowed to speak. How unscientific, unscholarly, anti-intellectual is that? Imagine being a student at the university in Regina and having that woman as your professor. And no one is more cowardly than a politician, of course. That's sort of tautology. And Regina's mayor was the worst, caving in and firing Dr. Moore. And as cowardly politicians usually do, he waited until Friday afternoon to announce his embarrassing news that he deplatformed a scientist. Knowing that most reporters had gone home for Friday night and wouldn't be working on the weekend, so the story would die. What a coward the mayor of Regina is. What a bully, censoring and silencing scientists. But the whole lot of them, the media party, academia, the politicians. And that was that. Huge victory for the censors. Aha! Dr. Moore is no longer polite company. He's no longer acceptable on the spectrum of ideas. He's no longer part of the debate. He's fringe now. He should be quiet. He should hide. He should accept his marginalization. After all, everyone who's anyone accepted that, demanded that. Everyone except the people of Regina who are actually curious about what Dr. Moore has to say. And if so many odious people want him censored, well, that made them all the more curious. Curious and furious. Who the hell's the mayor? Who the hell's some loser journalist, some nameless, faceless professor to say Dr. Moore, a PhD in ecology, can't speak about the environment? I mean, you tell me that I'm not allowed to hear someone speak, all of a sudden I'm really interested in hearing them speak. It's like when Justin Trudeau's election cops came after my book, The Libranos. I should tell you that I've actually sold more copies of that book in the last 2 weeks than I did during the election campaign itself. My book finally hit #1 on the Amazon.ca bestseller list. It had never gone higher than #2 before. And this happened because people don't want to let Justin Trudeau decide what they can or can't read about Justin Trudeau. And in fact, if Justin Trudeau orders them not to read a book, there must be some really good reading in there. Same thing with Dr. Moore. If all of these left-wing whiners really don't want you to hear what Dr. Moore has to say, sounds like he has some powerful truths to tell. Aren't you more curious now? So it was Friday night when I heard the news. And I phoned Dr. Moore, talked to him about it for a bit, and I offered to re-platform him. First of all, I told him that we would pay him, and I don't think it's a secret, his full $10,000 fee. Absolutely. Because he's worth it. Because just because the losers in Regina want to diminish him and disrespect him, and they want to shrink him, no, I don't accept that. I don't accept that he's worth less. In fact, I think he's worth more. All the buzz, people want to hear him. I didn't want to imply that I was offering him a re-platformed speaking gig because he was damaged goods and I was seeking a bargain. No, no, no. The first thing I said was, let me pay you your full fee. And then I said, let's have it at a big forum where the most people can attend. And instead of charging $300 a ticket like the city's boring conference, let's make this one affordable. $25 a ticket if we can keep it that low and afford the venue. But it was Friday night when I was talking to him, and I told him we should not announce that we were replatforming until we had found a hotel or convention center that would be resistant to continued deplatforming from the mob, because they'd be furious if they knew we were replatforming him. They'd try and get the new venue to break him. So on Monday morning, when the hotels and convention centers in Regina, when the sales staff came back to work, we started making phone calls. I got to tell you, the Delta Hotel refused. The Ramada Hotel refused. Another convention center said they needed to check with senior management, and that would take days. But the Connexus Arts Center said, you bet. That was good. Dr. Jordan Peterson had spoken there a year or two ago, and he was controversial, at least in the eyes of deplatforming leftists and the CBC and other kooks. And the Connexus Arts Center stood firm. So I knew we'd be a good fit if they were cool with Dr. Peterson. But just to be sure, I asked the lovely saleswoman I was dealing with to confirm with their CEO that they would stand firm against the deplatformers. She checked with them, and she got back to me and said, you bet, they would. They just wanted us to hire some extra security that night. I said, no problem. We probably would have done so anyways. So yesterday we signed the contract, and I actually paid the entire fee, the rental fee, in full in advance, just to make sure that deal was sealed. And we set up a website, reginaspeech.com. Really easy to remember, reginaspeech.com. $25 for a regular ticket, $100 if you want to come to a fancy wine and cheese reception before the main event. And for people who are really, really enthusiastic or really want to spend some private time with Dr. Moore, we're selling some tickets on that same website to a private dinner right after the speech. So the reception's from 6 to 6:30, the speech is from 6:30 to 8:30, and there's question and answers. And then 8:30 to 10, we're going to have a nice dinner, private dinner with Dr. Moore, and we're selling tickets for those. Those tickets are $500, which is obviously extremely expensive, but we will use that money to help cover the costs of the event, including the security, including flying in Dr. Moore, etc. We actually have a few sponsorship opportunities too at a higher price point, but my main goal, and this is what I told Dr. Moore, is to have the basic ticket for the 2-hour session, the speech and the Q&A session, as cheap as possible, $25 a pop, so maximum people can come in. $25 a pop compared to the $300 at the government conference. Anyways, we signed that contract last night, and we set up the website, and I tweeted about it, and so did Dr. Moore. I hadn't done an email to our Rebel viewers yet. I hadn't even done a little video about it yet, but I checked, and by early afternoon, we had already sold 450 tickets. 450 in a few hours. In Regina, Saskatchewan, that's a city of about 250,000 people. I couldn't believe it. I can't believe it. By the time you're watching this, we'll probably have 600 tickets sold. I called the venue and asked how big they could go. I was only aiming for 500. They said we could take up their whole theater and the balcony above, get a maximum of 2,000 people. Now, I don't want to set that as a goal because that's almost impossible. Imagine 2,000 people out of a city of, I think Regina's official population is like 240,000 or something. So 2,000 adults, that would be more than 1% of the entire population of adults in the city. It would be like if 25,000 people showed up in Toronto proper having about 2.5 million souls. The GTA is about 6 million. But I think we might be able to do it. Now look, I've heard Dr. Moore speak. He's very interesting. His speech will be great. I've seen him speak before, once at the Sun News Network. When I was there, we had a cruise, and he would say he's great. But I think these people who are buying tickets like crazy, it's partly because Dr. Moore's great. I've seen it. But I think it's more than that. I think this is a repudiation of all the scolds and bullies and censors and cowards. I think this is a giant middle finger to the entire "we know better than you" establishment, who want to tell us what to think and what to say and what to watch and who calls, what we can do. And people who call us insulting names if we dare to disagree with them. "Oh, you're a bigot." I think the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people are buying the tickets. We didn't even advertise this. I think it's a repudiation of the entire establishment. Not just the establishment, though, the ideas establishment. You know what I mean by that? Think about it. Media, professors, politicians, they all deal in ideas, right? And debate in their own way. Media, professors, politicians. And all of those elites said, we're closed to ideas and debates except our own narrow point of view. And the rest of society is saying, to hell with you. I'd like you to come to this event. It's not till May 19th. So you can make a plan if you live anywhere near Regina. We're deliberately doing it on May 19th because that's the night before the mayor's official conference from which Dr. Moore was canceled. So we'll have a vastly larger crowd and all the excitement, right? And the newspapers the next day, when they're starting that boring government conference, the newspapers will all be full of the interesting things that Dr. Moore said. Too bad the mayor's boring conference won't be able to hear Dr. Moore directly, but they banned him. So come to Regina if you can on May 19th. If you're coming in from Calgary or Edmonton or Saskatoon or Winnipeg, or even further away, consider making an overnight trip out of it. And if you can afford it, come to the reception in advance, or even if you can afford it, the sit-down dinner after the speech. I think that's going to be great. I'd love to talk to Dr. Moore after the event. How do you think it went? What do you think of the questions? I think that's going to be amazing. And I'd like to meet the other people there. We have a lot of supporters in Saskatchewan. I think it's going to be like a Rebel reunion, really. I believe this is the perfect thing for Rebel News to do. Journalistically, it's great. Dr. Moore is one of our favorite thinkers. Politically, it's our way of showing that the censors can't push us around. There's a chance we might even make a little bit of profit off this event. I mean, I never dreamed we would sell this many tickets this quickly. If we actually sold 2,000 tickets, we could actually make a little bit of money off this, which is good, because unlike all the other groups I listed who tried to ban Dr. Moore, the media party, university professors, the mayor, we're the only people who don't live off taxpayers' dollars. So I hope we can make a small profit and maybe do more events like this. But this is a sign that if you show courage just for a moment and have a plan maybe, other people will come to your aid, maybe even in massive numbers. You know, this is what I tried to say to someone else from Regina named Andrew Scheer. In the last election, I said, if you actually take a risk, actually stand up to the bullies and be yourself and say, to hell with the CBC and the professors, and speak plainly and not bend the knee to every bully and censor, people will cheer you and they'll come out in droves. This applies to the theory of man-made global warming. But I think it also applies to things like letting transgender men into girls' sports or girls' locker rooms. How about just speak out against it? It applies to mass, unlimited, unvetted immigration. It applies to free speech. Just show some courage and say to hell with the media party and the opinion elites, and I think the world will join you, at least the grassroots. This is the biggest and most pleasant news I have for you today. Before we even tried to sell a ticket, more than 450 people said that they were with us. I find that very, very hopeful, don't you? And by the way, I hope that foolish mayor attends. Maybe he'll learn something, but he'll have to pay for his own ticket. $25 for him. No freebies from us for cowardly politicians. $50 for the media. I don't know if you can see that pricing. And $250, can you see that there? For Al Jazeera, CBC, the Huffington Post, and Vice. All the fake news, $250 for them. They can afford it though. So see you there. If you can, go to reginaspeech.com. That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show, which is a show I do every day. I do a monologue, interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at premium.rebelnews.com.